Hey everyone, welcome to the overview of Data Compare for Oracle. In this class, we're going to look at how we can utilize Data Compare for Oracle to compare data from two different versions of a schema and also generate the synchronization script for the data differences between the two. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's go ahead and launch Data Compare for Oracle. Now, we previously installed Data Compare for Oracle from our previous modules, so we're not going to do that again. So let's go ahead and launch the product here. Okay. Similar to schema compare from previous sessions, you basically need to specify a source and a target for your comparison. So let's go ahead and specify our source, which is a schema. And I'm going to copy that over because the other schema is sitting on the same server. So let's pick the schema that we want to compare. This widget dev. So in this case, we're comparing our development schema to our test schema. Okay, and go ahead and hit compare now. Okay, so what this is doing is comparing data, all the records from the source tables to the records in the target table, and generates a report of what the differences are that we can review and then generate a deployment script if needed. All right, let's take a look at the results. All right. So as you notice here at the top, we have three different columns besides the table names. So we have data that is only available in the source of our comparison. We might have data or records that might exist in both, but different on some columns. And we might have records that only exist in the target. So what happens is for data that only exist in the source, obviously it's going to insert those into the target if you go ahead and deploy. For data that is different between this, that exists in both but is different, it's going to update. And for data that only exists in our targets, it's going to delete that data if we go ahead and deploy it. So you have some options here in terms of customizing or including, excluding any of these types of differences. So for instance, if we only care about deploying what's new in our source or what's different between our source and target, we can say exclude the differences from the target. And as you can see, it basically goes ahead and unchecks those records. The numbers that you see next to these boxes is the number of records that are different. So for example, for this widget purchases table, you can see we have 10,156 records that exist in the target environment, but they don't exist in the dev environment. So in this case, we excluded them so they don't get deleted when we go ahead and deploy our changes to this environment. So the other thing that I'd like to point your attention to is for the purpose of comparison, here at the bottom you can actually see what the differences are at the individual record level. So if we, for example, look at the widget prices table, we can actually see what those new records are that don't exist in our target. So we can see there the ID, we can see the value or the price under the price column, and the value for all the other columns that exist in that table. So what this means is that we're actually looking at the primary key of that table, or the primary key value of that table, to determine which record we should compare from our source to which record in the target. But you can simply select any of these tables here and either look at all differences or break it down into any of those three categories that we talked about. So if you only want to see data that exists in your source but not in the target, you can select this option here. If you want to see records that exist in both but are different on some columns, you can see that, and you can see the columns highlighted in purple here that are different, or you can just simply look at only the records that only exist in the target, which in this case we don't have any for the context table. Once you've selected and reviewed the differences between your source and the target, then the next step is to generate the synchronization script or the deployment script that would deploy those differences out to our target environment that we've set as our target. To do that, we go to Deployment Wizard. And just like Schema Compare, you have options to either just generate the deployment script using this Create a Deployment Script option, or generate the deployment script but also execute and deploy it out to your target environment. You have some options here as a kind of pre-deployment process, so you can recompare after deployment to make sure that everything is identical once the deployment is done. You can also save a copy of the deployment script. So let's go ahead and hit Next. Okay. As you can see, within a matter of seconds, it generated a script for synchronizing all of those records that are different from our source to the target. So here's the update statements for all the records that exist in both that are different. So you can go ahead and review your script. And if you're happy with the script and the changes, then you can go ahead and deploy them out to your target, or you can save the script and either send it over to folks who will be deploying them out, or save them in a specific location. So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and deploy my changes to the target. So this is basically executing the script that we just looked at in the background here against our target environments. So obviously there's quite a few records to update, so it's taking a bit longer than normal. But as you can see, the script went ahead and executed completely against our target. So what we're left with is the differences that we didn't want to synchronize. So you can see everything is now back to 0 for records that exist in the source or records that exist in both but are different. So the only difference now is the records that only exist in the target that we excluded using these actions item. So that's it from us for this session. Join us in future sessions where we'll be looking at how we can customize some of the comparison options with data compare, and also look at different types of sources and targets that you can configure using data compare for Oracle. Thanks for watching.